All right, so I know there's a lot of breaking news right now, but I want to talk a little bit about Trump and NATO because what he's saying recently and some clips that have come up as well as some posts are very telling about what's to come in the future. And so I want to talk a little bit about that and just give you my take on where we go from here. And I think it's very interesting to understand. So right now, in the midst of Israel and Lebanon having agreed to a ceasefire, Iran supposedly have also agreed to having no enriched uranium and as well completely opening the Strait of Hormuz. And this is also confirmed, and again, you could kind of put quotes around this, by President Trump as well as some other media outlets. But something that's very interesting is that when the Strait of Hormuz was opened, just before that, apparently, and this is according to a tweet here, where he said that since the Strait of Hormuz situation is over, I received a call from NATO asking if we would need some help. I told them to stay away unless they just want to load up their ships with oil. They were useless when needed, a paper tiger. And by filling ships with oil, I'm also assuming in part with the US so that they can have money and give business to them. But this is not the first time that Trump has harped on NATO. Most recently, 2 days ago, he said NATO wasn't there for us and they won't be there for us in the future. And if you just search up NATO, according to Trump's post, he says some of these things throughout like the last year, specifically stating that NATO wasn't there for the US when we needed them, even though they leech off and the US helps them so much. On April 8th, he said NATO wasn't there when we needed them and they won't be there if we need them again. Remember Greenland, that big poorly run piece of ice. And then back on the 9th, none of these people, including our own very disappointing NATO, understood anything unless they have pressure placed upon them. And then on you go. March 26, NATO nations have done absolutely nothing to help with the lunatic nation now militarily decimated of Iran. The US needs nothing from NATO, but never forget this very important point in time. And then most recently, in a gaggle with the press on the 16th, before he left for another trip somewhere, this is what he was asked, and listen to the whole conversation.
On Australia, Mr. President, you asked for 3.5% increase, like 5% you did with NATO. Australia has only gone to 3%. Are you satisfied with that decision? Would you consider
I'm not happy
reviewing
with
defense
Australia because
Why
they were not
specifically?
because they were not there when we asked them to be there. So
What
Australia.
did you ask for?
Australia was another one. They were not there, having to do with Hormuz, the Hormuz.
What do you mean by that?
Still friendly with Albanese?
I'm not happy. I'm not happy.
But why specifically? Do you still have a good relationship with the Australian Prime Minister?
What message do you think the ceasefire in Lebanon sends to the UK and the other European allies who chose not to get involved in the war?
Well, we spend trillions and trillions of dollars on NATO. And when I asked them to get involved on a much smaller situation, which is Hormuz and Iran, they weren't there for us. Remember what I said. They weren't there. None of them. They weren't there. So we were there on Ukraine. I mean, we shouldn't have been. It would have never happened if I were president. But nevertheless, when they've had problems over the years, we were there. When we asked them to get involved on a very minor skirmish by comparison to what it could be, they weren't there. So I don't think they'd be there for a large skirmish. And therefore, I think they've got themselves a problem.
Now, listen to what he says. He says that they are going to have a problem. And so this is what he's been saying this entire time. You weren't there for us, and we're not going to be there for you. And so this is what Clandestine comments about this situation. He says, Trump is all but confirming our time in NATO is coming to an end. He's not repeating himself for no reason. He's softening the landing for the public. He's making it abundantly clear as to what's going to happen. We will no longer be Europe's security blanket. And so I think what's happening here is that he's prepping the nations, he's prepping the public, and us as the listeners, the Anons, the White Hats, and the citizen journalists, all of us that are in this to try to spread the word, we are being warned of what is happening next. And I believe that in some sense, Trump is going to pull out of NATO, if not completely, or reduce the spending or the help or something like that, because they were just being saved through this whole situation, having basically completed the mission, denuclearizing Iran and getting the strait back open and oil flowing back for these nations. And they had a window, a chance to help the U.S. with the military and with all this other stuff, but they didn't. They didn't even offer their hand in that whole conflict from March all the way till now. And so I believe that he is queuing up or teeing up something big to happen, and he's telling us in advance. But as he's said before, he's constantly following through with his promises, following through as best as possible, whether it takes a long time or not, with some of these decisions and the desires that he has for de-globalizing, localizing, and getting nations back to being a national sovereign nation instead of this whole global movement, globalism movement. And so I've said before, the white hats, many of these guys, we are in a season, in a phase where God is allowing a lessening blow of the Antichrist to come in and to rule all these nations as a sovereign power over everything. And so because Trump is doing that, he's effectively extending the time before the end times and all that stuff, before the inevitable happens in terms of biblical prophecy and the takeover, the Antichrist takeover. But for now, we're seeing this being localized and just allowing it to be extended to some degree by the Lord's grace. So just a thought I had, wanted to know your guys' comments down below. And also, if you guys want to help support me reach our financial goal for this month, we are short by a little bit. Would love it if you guys can partner with me towards the goal. Every little bit helps me and my ministry and the work I do behind the scenes to keep myself and everything else afloat. So please consider it. All the information is down below in the description, givesendgo.com/chrisyoonyt or PayPal, Zelle, Venmo. Thank you guys so much. More to come. Talk to you guys very soon.